On today's DNVR Broncos podcast, we are breaking down many things. First, we're going to talk about the Broncos' new hire, which is a big one. Then, we're going to transition to draft mode and talk about the biggest needs for the Broncos in the draft. And we're going to talk to our guy, draft expert Fran Duffy, to find out which players fit the Broncos' needs in the draft. Big show starting now. Welcome to Denver, Ronald, Curry. Welcome to the DNVR Broncos podcast, to our draft expert, Fran Duffy, and welcome to everyone to the DNVR Broncos podcast. We are live from the Toyota Lounge, driven by your local Front Range Toyota stores, and we are the DNVR Broncos podcast. Ryan Koenigsberg to my left, Henry Chisholm to my right. We got Dion behind the camera, and Zach Stevens rocking and rolling with you today. Fellas, how we doing on this Thursday?
Couldn't be better.
Couldn't be better.
I just need the Olympics to end. Like, it's a lot of fun. I need to sleep. There's something on at all the hours where I want to be asleep.
That is optional, you know.
It's not, though. It happens once every 4 years. Either you're an Olympics fan or you're not. And if you're not
every
up
2
all
years
night,
if you're an Olympics fan.
well, I'm a Winter Olympics fan. The Summer Olympics kind of like the basketball's fun.
That's
but
the worst part of the Summer Olympics.
I agree.
Really?
I agree with you.
Like,
and I think the hockey's the worst part of the Winter Olympics. I can watch that all the time.
It's
But
true.
no, like-
And they're interrupting my precious NHL season
That's
to
true.
play this.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing about the Summer Olympics is like running doesn't interest me. Throwing something doesn't interest me. Like there's just not like
Swimming?
it's the swimming is fine, but I spent too much. I was on the swim team for like 5 years, and I'm kind of burned out. So like if there's like a Michael Phelps, then like sure that's fun. But even that like swimming versus
Did you see the cross country skier yesterday from Norway, Klæbo? He won his 10th medal. Can't remember if it was gold or not. I think it's just his 10th medal. He has the second most medals of any Olympian all time. He doesn't even have half as many as Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
Doesn't Phelps have 23 or something?
23.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That was a fun time.
Yeah. It
That
really
was
was. And
crazy.
that's something we were talking about because we were having a little GOAT discussion about the Olympics before this. And that's one thing, when a GOAT emerges in the Olympics, it's so fun to follow.
It is really fun to
I
follow.
wonder who the GOAT Winter Olympian is for the United States.
I'm going to say it's this dude for all of Winter Olympics.
Yeah, Klæbo.
Right.
There were a lot of people tied at 9 before he got 10. So my guess is an American was probably in that group.
I feel like for our age, it's Shaun White.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I still like go back and watch those. The X Games was where they were really crazy, but the Olympics too.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
Man, and I love talking Broncos, and let's dive in, guys, because the Broncos made a fascinating hire last night. They hired Ronald Curry to be their wide receiver coach, and this is after they interviewed him to be the offensive coordinator a couple of weeks ago. He doesn't get that job, but he lands as the Broncos wide receiver coach, and this is a very fascinating move because Ronald Curry was the past 2 years was the quarterbacks coach for the Buffalo Bills. Okay, take whatever you want from that. He can help receivers turn into Josh Allen, I guess. But before that, he spent 2016 to 2021 with Sean Payton and the Saints. And from 2018 to 2021, he was their wide receivers coach, working with Michael Thomas in his prime. And so I love the connection there with Sean Payton. Sean Payton gets someone comfortable. But then not only helping develop Michael Thomas, but then being able to work with a very strong-minded wide receiver that needed to be fed, that had a very big personality and a very big head. He knows how to handle this. In case Pat Bryant turns into that guy, in case Troy Franklin turns into that guy, in case Marvin Mims or Cortland Sutton turn into that guy, or in case the Broncos go out and make a big-time trade or a big-time free agent pickup.
Yeah, they're just prepping to get George Pickens in here. Just gotta, get the guy who can handle the big personality.
He's good at
Assure
writing
him
the
he's gonna get
suspension
the
papers.
ball. He's not gonna get suspended.
I mean, he always does.
Did he this year?
Yes.
For what?
Being late to a team meeting.
He got suspended for the first drive.
That doesn't count.
the first two
bro.
drives.
Okay, but I mean,
That does count.
well,
that
I'm,
100%.
well, I'm talking about the receivers coach writing suspension papers. That's what I'm talking about.
You can't get suspended. He was just you can't get suspended for a drive.
He did.
No, he just he got punished.
And what was the punishment?
He didn't get to play for one drive.
Which is called?
Resting.
Was it rest? So what was he? Yeah, he wasn't resting.
He wasn't
anything.
suspended for a drive.
Weird to rest at the beginning
He
of
was
a game.
reprimanded for a
The
drive.
team put the announcement out.
That was
Also, Aqib offered for $1 million a year.
okay.
So he was like, just give George Pickens $39 million, give one to me,
I'm sure George will love that.
and I'll follow him around. I'll wake him up every morning. I'll drive him in and make sure that he's always on time for everything.
I will do it for half that price.
I'll do it for a quarter of that price.
There you go.
But George has to respect you.
Maybe, or maybe it's better if he doesn't. Like maybe it's easier just to ignore me.
Yes.
You're not ignoring a keep.
No.
Exactly.
But I mean, like
You're not
ignoring
ignoring
like
a
when
keep.
I follow him around in every part of his life, like that could be kind of annoying, unless I'm just kind of like hanging back there. Unless I need to say,
Yeah, he's less likely to befriend you.
that's fine. That's fine.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
paid
that's
half
your
a million.
that's your positive.
Right.
Man, and who knows if it has anything to do with it, or Sean is just bringing another friend from New Orleans in. But I like this just in case that happens. And I also like it because he's clearly a good wide receivers coach. I mean, Michael Thomas had the most catches in NFL history, and that record still stands even with the 17th game with Ronald Curry as his wide receiver coach. He knows what he's doing. And my guess, guys, is Ronald Curry teaches catching passes by putting the thumbs together.
Oh, yeah.
My guess is that's what he
Big
does.
fan of
Sean's-
Miami.
Yeah, big Miami guy. So I like it. It's hard to truly know when you hire a position coach if it's a good or a bad hire, but I think there are many signs that point to this actually being a good hire for the Broncos. So Ronald Curry, maybe we'll talk about you next when the Broncos do make a big pickup, and then you're responsible for keeping that person in check and then also feeding that person.
Also, I feel like a lot of people have like a negative feeling about people, like about Sean Payton just hiring people that he knows and is comfortable with. But like, why?
I don't get
If
it
he
either.
likes the way that person did it, and he didn't like the way that the person that was in there did it, and he has an opportunity to bring in the guy that he likes the way he does it, why would he not do that?
Right. Why would you not hire a good coach that you think is a good coach?
That you know is a good coach.
Yeah.
Rather than just, and he called a shot on the DB's coach.
Yep.
But for this one, he's like, I want it done a certain way. I know this guy coaches it that way, and I can get him.
Yep, 100%. Especially when the guy you had last, it probably wasn't all his fault, Kerry Colbert. But with this guy, there was too many drop passes with the last guy. And I think 49 or something like that. So Sean is now
Actually sickening.
believes that he's going to be the answer. So welcome to Denver, Ronald Curry. Guys, let's turn our attention to the rest of this show, which is looking at the draft and specifically the Broncos' positions of need with the draft and how they line up with the draft, specifically pick 30. We're going to have our draft expert, Fran Duffy, on in just a second. But I want to ask you guys a question because yesterday you guys broke down the Broncos' position of need. So I want you to fill me in on that, but also I want you to tell me how at all when you view the Broncos' positions of needs, does it change when you just look at the draft? Now, obviously, it's going to change before the draft because free agency is going to fill some of those holes, and we're going to know that. But looking now, do you see any way that you would change the Broncos' positions of needs when it's just a draft-specific lens?
One thing that I'll say is, at least based on what I said yesterday, wide receiver would probably not be a position of need for the Broncos in the draft. The reason being, I said it's the biggest need while simultaneously being the smallest need because you have a group. You have a group of guys that's good. My take was I want someone added to that group that's elite. I don't want to add someone to that group that's good. And so while, yes, could you get lucky or really nail it at pick 30 and get an elite player? Sure, people have gotten elite players much later than that. So I'm not going to be mad if they go there, but to me, it's like you're going to just make it more crowded for guys to try to be able to develop.
Yeah. I think if you're talking about needs in the draft, like the Broncos shouldn't have any needs for this season by the time they get to the draft. If they do, something's gone horribly wrong. Because that's just, there's a reason they took a cornerback in the first round last year. I guess they hadn't quite figured out the running back need, but that's because sometimes with running backs, you just wait till after the draft anyway and see what you get. So that might be the one exception. So to me, draft needs, you look at who's going to be leaving next year, similar to when they drafted Savion Jones this year. Or last year, I guess, because JFM leaves the year after. So you look through and say, okay, big free agents next year, Riley Moss. You're going to have to make a decision there, and likely with Jaquan next year as well. So do you draft a corner because you know that you could save $20 million a year if you let Riley walk, or $15 million a year if you let Jaquan walk? You already have Jade, you already have Chris Abrams-Drain, but it's on the board. Brandon Jones will be a free agent. Considering the fact you don't really have a third safety right now, or you don't have one that you're excited about necessarily, maybe that becomes a need. So I think they're totally different. I think offensive line, Ben Powers is gone after next year. You could give him his $18 million a year or whatever in free agency, or you could draft a guy now who you hope is ready to take that spot. So I think
just Palcho.
Right. I think you want him competing at the very least for that job.
Yeah.
So I think the needs in the draft are very, very, or will be very, very different than the needs that you have when you go into free agency.
Yeah, and I think the needs even before you hit free agency are different in the draft as opposed to right now, because I think you don't have to get an impact player in the first round because you're picking at 30, but man, you could get an impact player in the first round, but you're probably not going to get it at wide receiver. So I agree, Ryan, that in terms of just a draft-specific lens, that need bumps down when I just view the draft, because I view it similar to how you viewed it. But you can get, at number 30, you could get an impact running back that comes in and is your guy. Not saying they're going to do that. They could also get it in free agency and that need goes down. But the way it views right now, you can definitely get a guy that is the starter in the first round. Tight end as well, potentially you could do, especially because if the Broncos keep Ingram, which I expect them to, I don't expect them to go spend big money on a tight end in free agency. So I think that need still stays very high in the draft. And then also, you mentioned the interior offensive line. Man, if you do move on from Ben Powers and save a little bit of money, that need pops up right there. And how many guys do we talk about that Fran has on his big draft board that are guard/tackles in the first round? There's like 7 of these guys that could be there at 30. You pick up one of those guys, that need jumps up, even though right now there's no need for that. So I do think it changes. And let's have this conversation with the guy I was just talking about, with Fran Duffy. Let's have our draft expert on that conversation. It's coming up next.
Shout out to our friends over at Common Spirit Health. They are more than just hospitals and clinics. They're a team of passionate and expert caregivers who are dedicated to your well-being. They're part of the community. They're around. You can find them anywhere. And from preventative care to advanced surgical solutions, their skilled physicians and caring staff are here for you. They offer personalized treatment that's tailored to your unique needs. So if you want a cutting-edge technology combined with human kindness, you can find that at their 20 different hospitals, 240 different clinics and care sites right here in Colorado. So whatever you're looking for, whether you want a routine checkup, whether you're managing a chronic condition, if you're responding to an emergency, you can trust Common Spirit to deliver exceptional care close to home. Go over there, experience the difference that compassion can make. Find a Common Spirit location near you and make sure to discover a new standard of health and healing by visiting mountain.commonspirit.org. Common Spirit Health, official healthcare partner of the Denver Broncos.
And shout out to our friends over at Toyota. I got my Toyota car wash the other day, and my God, is it looking sweet. Just a reminder of the way it glistens in the sun. It's such a sexy vehicle. And Toyota just does that one after another, after another, after another. The latest one that we're kind of on is the Land Cruiser.
Oh.
I thought I was going to be a 4Runner guy for my next Toyota.
What a name, too.
But the Land Cruiser, wow.
Just tells you exactly what you do.
It really looks like you could cruise on some land.
Right.
And that's what you want to do. And that's when you get a Toyota, it does feel like you're cruising more than you're driving, because it's just so smooth. It's like you're just floating on a cloud over the road.
So it should be the Air Cruiser.
It could be.
The Cloud Cruiser.
The Cloud Cruiser would go crazy. Anyways, if you want a new Toyota, visit a Front Range Toyota store at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is a proud partner of the National Football League and the official vehicle of DNVR. Let's go places.
And shout out to everyone that's tuning in the Twitter chat, tuning in later, tuning in on the podcast side. We appreciate every single one of you. Hit us with a thumbs up. And let's go out to the Xfinity Mobile call-in line to hear from our draft expert, Fran Duffy, or as we like to call him, the franchise, helping the Broncos continue to build up their franchise. What's going on, Fran?
What's going on, gentlemen? How's everything out there?
Man, it's great. It is perfect. And it's exciting to talk to you today because now we're entering your season where you are the expert. I admitted earlier this week, this is the least I know about the draft in a very long time because the Broncos have been playing so late into the season, into the postseason now. So, Fran, I want to ask you a very basic question. What position are the Broncos taking at number 30 right now?
To me, I know a lot of people are putting it, linebacker, at that spot. That's huge because this time of year for mock drafts, for a lot of analysts out there, for a lot of writers, insiders, it's like, all right, how do I get this player into my mock draft? And it's just there's a sense of routine and groupthink that falls into place. So we often see Georgia linebacker, CJ Allen. We see the guys at that position kind of fall to the Denver Broncos in a lot of these mocks. I really feel like it'll be an offensive playmaker. I'm looking at a pass catcher. It wouldn't shock me if they went line of scrimmage as well, on either side, knowing Sean Payton and his history. So to me, that's kind of where my head's been at. But I'm excited to see how that, some of the wins behind the scenes, how they kind of change here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about linebacker in particular, by the time the draft comes around, the Broncos aren't going to have a need at linebacker.
Right.
That's just not the kind of, when you have what we think is the best defense in the NFL, you don't leave such an important position to a potential rookie at that point. And that doesn't mean you can't draft a guy to develop and use later if Alex Singleton's back or whatever it may be. But I totally agree. If they do go with a pass catcher, we're all interested in the tight ends, I think, more so than the receivers, although there's obviously room for a receiver as well. But who would you look at? Who would be the ideal target there?
I think if we're talking round one, it's really only one name that I think we're talking about that high, and it's going to be Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon. My guess is that would require a trade up, which we know Sean Payton is not afraid of. Now, he might have to convince George Payton to make that kind of move, but I think when you're looking at Sean Payton, the way that he's operated in the past, he has not been bashful about giving away picks and moving up to go and get his guy and be aggressive. I think that Sadiq is the prototypical, he's the Joker. Yeah, he is the guy that we spent so often, so much time last year talking about that kind of player in this offense. Sadiq is the true definition of that archetype. So I think when you're looking at Kenyon Sadiq, that's the player you're looking at as a first round joker. There are a handful of other guys I think we talk about, but I don't know that any of them are going to be going in the latter stages of round one where we're talking about with the Denver Broncos right now. Last year in the draft, you had Colston Loveland, you had Tyler Warren, and then it was Mason Taylor who went in the top 40 to the New York Jets in the second round. I think we're probably not going to have three guys go that high. I think it's really going to be Sadiq, and there's going to be another little bit of a drop off, and then we get into the rest of the group there later in day two and then through day three. It's a great class, but that's where the depth is. That's where the strength of it is. It's more like tight end twos, tight end threes that you're taking in the middle rounds and late rounds.
Let's talk a little receiver because my thought on the biggest need for the Broncos is elite playmaker. And I think it can come from the receiver position, but I'm worried about finding that at the end of the first round. So who in your mind could fit that mold to be the Broncos version of JSN or Puka Nacua? Just one of those guys where it's just like, hey, we're trying to get the ball to this guy all day long because we know good things happen every time he gets it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's going to be really fascinating, RK, because, we've seen that the way that Sean Payton has built some of these receiving cores, not just here in Denver, but then down in New Orleans was, all right, you got some big oak trees, right? You get the Marcus Colstons, the Tim Patricks, we saw last year, day two, go out and you get Bryant. I think when you look at the way that he has attacked that position, you're going to get those bigger bodies. And so I think of Denzel Boston at Washington as a guy that would make a lot of sense and fit that archetype. But we also saw that they'll go and get a Marvin Mims. He's had some of those like more explosive, shifty players, during his time in New Orleans as well. And I think that when you're going into, if you're shopping in that aisle, Casey Concepcion is a name that, from Texas A&M that I absolutely would keep an eye on. He's a guy that's got punt return ability. He's great at yards after catch, but then also one of the best pure separators in this class as well. So to me, I'll be interested. And this is honestly one of the things I'm doing this weekend before I make the trip out to Indianapolis. I always do it like the weekend before I get out there, just so it's all front of mind, is I write a question or two down to ask head coaches and GMs at their press conferences and try and bounce around and ask as many of them as I can. I know I'm not going to get to everybody, but I think the topic of wide receiver will probably be at the front of mind for me if we get the chance to talk to Sean Payton next week.
I absolutely love that, Fran. Want to continue, by the way, the Toyota chat, everyone absolutely loves you already because the first thing you said was Broncos need a playmaker, and man, does Broncos Country agree with you that. And so I want to ask you about Kenyon Sadiq, go back to him really quick because you mentioned the gap between him and everyone else. Is he worth taking in the first round for the Broncos? Maybe even a trade up. Is he that special, or is it best for the Broncos to wait until the third, fourth round and maybe get someone that they end up developing and isn't an instant impact guy this year?
I think the gap is that wide between him and the rest of this class, Zach. And I think when you look at the way that he is able to impact the game, I mean, he is a top level athlete and pass catcher, like all the upside things we talk about in terms of receiving production and things like that. Like he could do all of that, but then he is a trained killer as a blocker. Like you watch him on the move. Now he's undersized and then he's like 6'3", 250. We'll get the official measurements next week. So he is not hand in the dirt, Adam Troutman, you line up next to the tackle and block defensive ends, at the point of attack on power. He is, hey, we're going to line him up as a wing. We're going to put him in as a slot. We're going to get him on the move. And then he's going to be like a lead blocker out in space. We're going to block him up on safeties. We're going to do a lot of those things. He's awesome in that role. If you go into the Die Hard draft guide and you go through down at the bottom, I've got like all the video highlights of these players. And honestly, you go like all through the season, there are more highlights on social media from him as a blocker than as a pass catcher. And by the way, like he's also a dynamite pass catcher as well. One of the first highlights I have was him hurdling a defensive player for Penn State on a touchdown run in the playoff game last year in 2024. So he has got outstanding upside as a two-way player at the position. To me, like when you talk about like archetype, he's like Brock Bowers type of player. He's like Brock Bowers type of athlete and physical specimen. That's what we're talking about here with him, but it's just a smaller runway of proven college production because he was a backup behind a senior-laden group ahead of him last year with Oregon.
Wow, I am absolutely sold on him. I was already sold on him coming in, Fran. You just absolutely sold me on him. And really quick, I just want to remind everyone about your Die Hard draft guide because it is absolutely incredible. It's such a resource. I've been diving in with it over these past couple of weeks trying to get knowledge of the draft. And man, has it helped me so much. And everyone gets access to that if you're a Die Hard over at thednvr.com.
Yeah, I'm curious about Sadiq. Because I want to like him. There's just enough of the things so he averaged 40 receiving yards per game this year. There have been 29 first-round tight ends since the year 2000 who've been drafted, like I said, in the first round. 26 of them have more than 40 yards per game in their last year. Only 3 of them have less. And like that level of production, and they had like the other tight end who kind of surpassed him when you get into the postseason. And he's not the biggest tight end either. And so I have those little concerns about him as a blocker. Again, like you use him true in line, run powers and that sort of stuff. And then also, can we trust that he actually is that receiver? Because as a first round tight end, you need him to be that guy. And this is a long one, but he kind of reminds me of like a Harold Fannin when you say like get him out in space and he can block a little bit. And that obviously worked out. So by draft day, I want to be sold. But as of now, I just can't quite get there. Are you concerned about the production in that way?
No, because of this. I think if you look at a lot of the best players at the position, around the NFL, production is not a predictor for success at this position. And he only had 80 career catches. To your point, like the production was kind of up and down, even just this past season. But I'm looking at some of the top players at the position. You look at George Kittle. He had let's see, he had 48 career catches at Iowa, right? And he started 17 games. So we're talking like same kind of sample size, and almost half the amount of catches. You look at Mike Gesicki, he had 130 catches, but then you go down and it's like, all right, TJ Hawkinson had fewer catches than what we're talking about here with Sadiq. Sam Laporta wasn't like always extremely productive at Iowa. And I'm going down the list here. A lot of these guys that are at the top of the position, and I'm doing this on the fly, I'll make sure I insert this into the draft guide, though, because the big knock on him has been the consistency of production. But, man, like that, to me, like this has become a traits position in the NFL. The guys that are really, really big or test really, really well, Sadiq is going to be one of those guys. And it's not just that he's pass catcher only. The fact that he can be a two-way player at the position, I think is really, really valuable.
Okay.
Going a little off the Broncos here, just because this was a big topic of discussion in the office the other day when we opened up your draft guide, which is you having Keldrick Falk as your number 2 overall player in the class, which means I think you're the highest person in America on him. So I'm curious what it is. Why do you love him so much?
Yeah, Nate Tice and I, so Nate Tice over at Yahoo. Nate, I don't think he has him quite at number 2 at this point now. He and I both had number 1 on our board throughout the course of the fall. I had him on the podcast, on the All NFL Draft podcast back in, I want to say like October, maybe early November, and just kind of wax poetic about him. RK, I think what I like most about Keldrick Falk is the profile is pretty peerless, man. Like he has not been overly, like the production is the biggest knock, but he's extremely disruptive. He's long. For a guy who's 280 pounds, like he is explosive. I'm like really excited to see him test. Great character, 2-year captain as a junior, extremely young, doesn't turn 21 years old until the fall, until the season begins. He's got a clean medical record. He lines up inside, outside. He does all the dirty work. Guys that have been through that program all rave about him as former teammates. Opponents also say, yeah, this guy's one of the toughest guys to block in the SEC. Coaches all rave about him internally and then again externally. To me, like that is a profile where I am willing to buy on in terms of what he could be down the road. The way I kind of look at it is this: when I stack him up against some of the other edge rushers in this class, I've got major questions. I'm like, I don't know if David Bailey is going to be a 3-down player, right? Like, I don't know if Arvell Reese is going to be able to fully hit his ceiling as a rusher. I feel like Keldrick Falk is going to get there. It might take a year, but I think he's going to get there, right? Like I feel more confident about it. So when I look at Falk and I stack up all these factors, yeah, I'm going to be higher on him than consensus. He's a player that I absolutely will be sticking my neck out on when it comes to this class.
Well, my guess is, Fran, he's going to be jumping up a lot of people's draft boards after next week. So you were on top of it first. My final one for you here. We had this conversation earlier this week, and you're the best person to answer this question. So I want to ask you, who right now, and I know this is a difficult question to answer, but who right now is the best player that you could reasonably see fall to the Broncos at pick 30?
The best player I could see fall. Give me 1 second. So the way I'm looking at, I don't think Sadiq makes it down to 30. So I'm looking at the rest of this group here. I think that when you look at the cluster, because typically what happens in a situation like this, it's one of 2 scenarios. It's either you have a tight cluster in the back end of the round where I look at offensive tackle and say, all right, well, you have Caden Proctor, you have Monroe Freeland, you have Maxi Honachor from Arizona State, you have Caleb Lomo, you have a bunch of guys that all could go, and then it's just a matter of what order do they go in, and you might have it third, this guy at the top of the stack, and everybody else had him lower, and so then he falls to you, right? Like there's that scenario, or there's a run at another position, and that forces other guys to fall. I think of Quinyon Mitchell falling to the Eagles a couple of years ago. I didn't think there was any way Quinyon Mitchell was going to follow him. And honestly, I don't think the Eagles thought Quinyon Mitchell was going to. They were in talks that try and move up to get Quinyon Mitchell, but there were runs at other positions that bumped him down the board. And so when I look at that, I say, all right, well, could that be a situation where like Sonny Styles makes it that far? To me, that would be really surprising. I think that Sonny Styles is one of the 10 best individual talents, maybe one of the 5 best individual talents in this draft. But at that position, you get a team here, a team there that passes on him. There's a run at tackle, there's a run at pass rusher, and then all of a sudden he falls into your lap. Again, I find that unlikely, but that would be a name that would come to mind from that path.
So I think by the time the draft comes around, the Broncos will kind of have this year's needs covered. And so when you look ahead to what they could want to plan for next year, I think the biggest problem coming down the line is that they're going to be probably losing Ben Powers, starting left guard. And Sean Payton, the guy who wants to invest in the offensive line, it feels like they're kind of overdue to finally do that in the draft. when you look through, if I said I want somebody who maybe sits this year, maybe plays a bit this year, but can play some guard right away, eventually has the upside to maybe bounce out to tackle and could be there at 30, who do you think kind of fits that mold?
Yeah, I would say there are a couple guys that stand out. You know, if you want to go like potentially is there, but probably not. You would say like Caden Proctor would fit that. I ultimately think that Caden Proctor from Alabama, 3-year starter at left tackle, enormous, like huge physical specimen, outrageous power, inconsistent pass protector. A lot of people, and I honestly I feel this way myself. Probably better served kicking inside the guard in the league. I think he's going to go, even though he's had some ups and downs. I think he's going to go earlier than what we're talking about with the Broncos. So when I get past him, I think the next group of guys that I'd look at, Vega Ioane from Penn State, who's been a pure left guard, and he's played a little bit of right guard, but it's been mostly left guard throughout his career. I think that he would make some sense. My guess is, though, he ends up going. I think there are too many teams that are going to need offensive line help, and Ioane is the best pure guard in this class. So honestly, the guy that I would land on there would be Chase Besantis from Texas A&M. This is a guy that is really athletic, but he's also like really thickly built. He kind of reminds me a little bit, honestly, of some players that Sean Payton had worked with in the past. I think of like Eric McCoy, a similar kind of body type. He played at center for A&M, but Besantis is a similar kind of body type. Really fast off the ball, used as a puller, can be a weapon on the move, but also just really stout. And when his technique is right, he is one of the best pure blockers I've seen in this class. Equal parts run blocker and pass protector. I like what I've seen from Besantis. I do think there's a little bit of boom bust there, but I think ultimately that's a guy that has that kind of that upside that you'd be looking at late in the first round.
There's the franchise telling us everything we need to know. Can't wait to catch up, maybe even on a weekly basis, Fran, because you just have so much fantastic insight. We appreciate you joining us, and make sure that everyone goes and checks out Fran's draft guide over at thednvr.com. Thank you, Fran.
See you, Fran.
Appreciate it, guys. Talk soon.
Man, the best. There's so much ball knowledge.
We could have gone the rest of the show just asking him questions.
100%. And I mean, that's just like we're at the questions we all asked. I'll put this on myself. The questions I asked are like the most basic questions to him. It's like he can do this in his sleep. Like we'll be getting into 4th, 5th, 6th round guys, and he'll be having the exact same amount of knowledge about these guys. Like I said, I don't know
Henry
if I
was throwing some complex, multi-layered ones there at the
Yeah.
end.
Those are the questions we need answered.
Oh, totally. It was like
Those are the ones we
like
need.
a chat GPT prompt.
Yeah. You gotta be specific.
Exactly. You're like, can you give me a guy who could start at guard, maybe play a little bit, kick out the tie? I was like,
With a year of development.
But then, someone in the comments said Keldrick Falk at 2. Yikes. Speaking of ChatGPT, like anyone can just put in like, make me a mock draft.
True.
And it'll just spit out what everyone else is saying, and then you can just copy and paste that and say I did my work. Like I can trust that Fran is putting in all of the work when he has takes that are different from the consensus. That's what I want out of my draft analyst.
Yes.
In fact, I'm going to ask ChatGPT that, and we're going to find out who it has the Broncos taking in just a second. But really quick, just one more shout out to the draft guide, because I think I said this on the show a couple days ago, or else it was off air. He has 387 players in his draft guide, and I believe just 3 days ago it was at like 364.
Yeah,
so in the past 3 days, we've added we're almost at 400 people. That is insane. And it's not just a list of like 1 through 387. You click on each guy and it gives you a full breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
It's sicko stuff. And I mean that in the best possible way. We actually had someone in the comment section in the Twitter chat say they were looking at the draft guide and they were just blown away. It was a Dodger Deluxe right there, just blown away at how insane it is in its depth.
Oh, Dogger. It says Dogger. Thank
Dogger.
goodness.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you. Dogger
Give me a little
Deluxe.
heart attack.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a bad day thinking about the Dodgers.
Couple things I want to get to. Let's see what ChatGPT has the Broncos doing. Let's also get to something Fran said. I want to ask you guys, Sonny Styles falls to the Broncos at 30. What do you do? How does that room shake out this year and moving forward? Those conversations are coming up next.
Shout out to our friends over at Coors Light. Coors Light is it's just the best, especially the Olympics kind of winding down. Oh, also tomorrow, official first day of spring, as that is when spring training
Nuggets
starts.
are back tonight.
Yes, Coors Light's tonight. Spring Coors Lights. Oh, Zach just showed up in his Coors Light sweatshirt, which I guess you guys are going to be seeing this for a while before. Just Coors Light everywhere, as far as the eye can see.
Fourth wall broken.
That's the best. Nobody wants a fourth wall. Nobody likes. That's the worst wall. That's why it's never there. Down at the bar, Coors Lights. I can hear them getting all set up. I swear, just everywhere. Coors Lights. I bet that guy down the street would love a Coors Light. Everybody wants a Coors Light.
He definitely would.
When the mountains turn blue, it's cold as the Rockies. It's cold lagered. It's cold filtered. It's cold packaged. Make the most out of times that you choose to chill by choosing Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Beer.
There's 2 Bennies that I love. Benny Fowler, Benny Hanna.
Would have been really funny if neither of them was Benny Fowler.
That would have been funny.
Yeah.
But Benny Hanna, man, so good. Sometimes you forget about how great Benny Hanna is, and then you go back and you're like, wow. What a great reminder that you can just get a show while you have the best fried rice in the game.
Right.
They've got that Diablo sauce. You ever had that?
I haven't. Scares me a little.
Spicy. It hits. Mix that in with the fried rice. Delicious. They've got so many awesome entrees over there, and they've got the happy hour right now starting at $3 at the Denver and Broomfield locations from 3 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. So go check out our friends over at Benihana, get dinner and a show. Catch a shrimp flying through the air in your mouth.
Who doesn't like to catch things in their mouth?
See the onion volcano, the choo-choo train. All the hits. They'll play all the hits.
Right.
That's what they do over at Benihana. More information at benihana.com.
And shout out to everyone that's tuning in with us. Shout out to Fran. Like Ryan said, we could have talked to him for the rest of the show. Hit us with a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. Extra appreciate it in the off season right now. And the off season's like going to be in full force in a good way. Just starting on Monday. The combine starts on Monday. It is insane how quickly this thing is rolling. I'm going to be there talking to Sean and George Payton. I'm going to be joining you guys, giving you the inside of what I'm learning on camera, off camera. And then 2 weeks after that, free agency is open on Ryan's birthday.
Hell yeah.
Right.
Actually, just the legal tampering window opens on your birthday.
Well, that's when all the good stuff happens.
It is.
Yeah. I don't know if maybe that's when we'll trade for George Pickens.
Yeah, it could happen then. That'd be quite a birthday present,
That
wouldn't
would
it?
be almost as good as when they got Peyton Manning on my birthday.
So that was at like 7 a.m., 8 a.m.?
Also, no, it's not. It wouldn't be almost as good.
It would be.
No.
Oh, you're right,
No,
Henry. Yeah,
wide
Henry's
gap.
right.
Wide gap.
It would lead to the Denver Broncos winning a Super Bowl, so
Wide gap.
same thing as Peyton.
Wow.
Wide gap.
Yeah,
Also, almost as, in the eye of the beholder.
Right. It's like hitting the lottery or like
Hitting a plus 1,000 parlay.
free sandwich day at whatever sandwich store.
I would mess with a free sandwich right now.
Me too. Absolutely.
Okay, so I was going to save the mock draft until at the end of the show. No, you know what? I'm going to save the mock draft, the one that ChatGPT just gave me, till the end of the show. I promise you, this came out with a wild mock draft that you're going to want to hear.
Probably going to say they take like Bo Nix.
You'll have to wait and see. But let's dive into something that Fran said. And I put him in kind of a tough spot because it's a very complex question to answer about who the best player that could fall to the Broncos is. And I think it's fair that he pointed out like a top talent and mentioned how many different things can happen for him to fall. And he mentioned Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State, who is right now number 7 on Fran's draft board. Some people have him even higher than that. Like, this guy is an elite talent, at worst like a borderline elite talent for in this draft. If he falls to the Broncos, guys, do they take him? And I guess before we even ask that question, like, what are the Broncos? Where do you think the Broncos are going into the draft at inside linebacker, Henry?
They'll have their starters. Like, I don't know who it'll be. I'm struggling to figure out what I would do. I'd be tempted to say save. I think it's $9 million over 2 years if you move on from Dre Greenlaw. Use that to do the bulk of the work to bring Singleton and Sternad back. That's where I'm leaning, but I don't know exactly. Regardless, they will have 2 starting linebackers. There's a world in which you could say you only have 2, and Dre Greenlaw is one of them, so you're probably going to need at least 5-6 games from somebody else, and it could be a lot more.
Maybe 6-7.
Right, of course. And in that case, then drafting one early could make sense. But that's that kind of hole that you create by banking on Dre Greenlaw is why I think I would just not do that.
Well, and Henry, I agree with you that they will have their starters. We're not going to have like Alex Singleton and Karen Reed as the Broncos' two starters going into that. It's going to be Alex Singleton and Justin Strnad, or Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw, or Alex Singleton and another free agent linebacker. There's not going to be the glaring hole where it's like, okay, Broncos have to go get an inside linebacker in the first round. And that's what I think makes this pick interesting for the Broncos, is they will be set at inside linebacker for week 1 of the 2026 season when Sonny Styles potentially is available.
This would almost be a dream come true for him to fall all the way to the Broncos at 30. He's the entire package at linebacker. You want to talk about coverage skills? Well, he has them because he was a safety before he was a linebacker, and he played nickel. You want to talk about tackling? Well, he's one of the most sure tacklers in college football this last year. You want to talk about pedigree? Well, his dad played in the NFL. Like, it just goes on and on. Well, he was a state champion in basketball. Like, he hits everything that I could want in a first-round pick for the Broncos. And I'm higher on the position of inside linebacker than I think the average NFL fan. So I would love it.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. Even saying that the Broncos would have both of their starters, the great teams, we mentioned this 2 days ago, the great teams go best player available as much as possible, specifically when you're picking at 20 or 30 in between there. You just pick whoever's the best player there, and you know what? It's going to work out in the long run. If Sonny Styles is sitting on the bench for week 1, that's a great thing because it means that your starters are that legit ahead of him. I just want to quickly read what Fran has to say, a small piece of what Fran has to say about him. He says he has all the physical traits that are there, but I thought he really improved mentally, and as a tackler in 2025, he has the upside to be one of the best pure linebackers in football, but even if he doesn't hit that mark, I don't think he'll be far from it. NFL started with high upside, and he doesn't turn 22 until well into his rookie season.
That was what I was just going to mention. He's 21 years old.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about, okay, well, the Broncos could have their starters, great. By the time he starts, he's 22. He'll be younger than your first-round pick next year.
Yep.
Yeah. He's Isaiah Simmons. If you think that there's a world in which Isaiah Simmons does work out, then it makes a lot of sense. It's a huge gamble, though, because he's not somebody who's spent a lot of time just playing linebacker. Even this year, when he got to more linebacker, a lot of it is as like an outside linebacker who's just flexed out into space, essentially playing like a nickel spot. Again, it's like the Isaiah Simmons stuff. It's similar in a lot of ways to what Nick Bonito did, which is why it took him time as you figure out how to turn him into an edge rusher. Drew Sanders, another incredible comp, because it's that exact same thing where it's like you like the stack linebacker stuff, you like when he's out in the nickel, you love the versatility. But when the biggest concern about Sonny Styles is whether he can make good reads in the run game, like that's just not something I'm interested in a linebacker. Now, the Broncos are in a situation where they can gamble. Like if you bust on your first round pick, it isn't the end of the world. But to me, it is just a huge gamble to go after a guy who, again, they moved him into a little bit different position this year to try to get him to play more true linebacker. But still, when he's at his best, it's lined up basically playing as a nickel.
But that's kind of where, in like, I don't know, I want to see what Fran says about him in the run game. But it's kind of a perfect situation if you did have your two starting linebackers locked in this year, and then you just bring in Sonny Styles and have him be a weapon for you on defense this year.
Right.
And then,
similar to what they did with Drew Sanders.
Yeah. And, he currently weighs like 235 pounds. Like maybe you put 10 pounds on him over the course of the year before you're asking him to step in and be your starting inside linebacker next year. He's also 6'4".
Right.
Man, I actually see this as being a perfect situation because the Broncos will have their starters, and then he can develop. And Henry, that's what it seems like he needs from what you're saying is time to develop. And man, he gets to do that in a perfect situation. And it's funny you mentioned Isaiah Simmons. That's Fran's comp, is a fully formed Isaiah Simmons right there. Some other comps that Fran has in this draft guide. I mean, I have to scroll so far to get to some of this information because there's that much information on just Sonny Styles in here. He says Pete Warner, Caden Ellis, Jonah Ellis's brother, who's
talked to him.
been an absolute dog. Yeah, Quincy Williams, who's been great with the Jets, and Jamin Davis. I believe that's how you pronounce it.
Is it?
Jamin?
I think it's Jamin.
I was high on him coming out. But man, that is just incredible. So
yeah, Henry, you talked me out of him a little bit, and he says here in the run game, eyes can betray him at times, still developing here, can get held up at mesh points, can over pursue as a backside player, still adjusting with angles to the ball as a pure stacked player, can get a bit nosy and lose leverage as a force player. So yeah, you have to count on him learning that. Someone in the comments also pointed out that, and I think this is true, that Vance Joseph was the defensive coordinator of the Cardinals when they got Isaiah Simmons.
Right. Yeah, that's why the Cardinals fans didn't like him.
Yeah.
And didn't want him back as the head coach. Was because that was like the first thing that went wrong.
but he's not the same guy.
He's not the same. But
and maybe he can learn.
But maybe it's just not a fit for Vance because it also hasn't really worked with.
He thought it was before. Right. You did have the Drew Sanders thing, but again, it's just the Broncos are in position where they can't gamble on this pick.
The good news is he's going way before the Broncos pick,
Right.
and we won't really ever have to find out.
I just get scared of linebackers who need to learn. To me, the hard part is the mental side, which is why like the Texas Tech linebacker, J-Rod, like that's a guy who you know can just play the position.
I know.
The question is just whether he has any of like the special stuff that will translate to the NFL. You know, whether he can cover because he's not as rangy, he's not as fast. And the first round guys are the guys who do have, again, he's 6'5", is going to run in the 4.4s because he's a converted safety and can do all he can cover tight ends and do all that. But what's that worth compared to just an Alex Singleton who you know goes straight down? Now, my conspiracy theory is that maybe you do compare him a little bit to Alex in some ways because it is like that length. Now, you have the upgraded speed and all that, but where Alex can be... he has like obviously the mental side of the run game, but just going up and taking on like a guard, he doesn't have like the pure like brick like power to just knock a guy back. But he's just so physical that it doesn't matter. He'll fight that battle every day, even if he doesn't always win it. And the other stuff shows up in the run game. So, and that's the other thing with.
And like it can be learned, you know. Like we talked yesterday about linebackers being out of position, how that's the fastest way to lose a game. When we talked about that Thursday night game against the Browns. Justin Strnad was a starting linebacker in that game and had a bad day.
Right.
This year, you wouldn't have that complaint about Justin hardly at all about him being out of position. So like that stuff can be coached and learned, and it's not all just pure instincts. A lot of it is just understanding what you're looking at and making sure you don't get too ahead of yourself.
Right. And he's only been a linebacker for 1 year. So like if there is a chance that he figures it all out.
I agree with who was it in the Twitter chat? I think it was Jose or someone below. But I don't think it'd be gamble if you get a top 10 talent at 30 that has time to develop too. That is, man, to me that's a dream, and that's kind of what I'm looking at as really any pick, whether it's an inside linebacker, whether it's defensive line, whether it's offensive line. There's only really a couple of positions like running back that could step in and truly be like a day one starter where you're relying on right away. Tight end potentially with Sadiq there. Otherwise, man, you just get to develop a really talented person. That's what I want the Broncos to do in the draft.
I do disagree a little bit with your what you said earlier about the Broncos could get a starting running back at 30. I think there's only one, and I think he'll be gone by then.
Yep.
That's fair. Yeah.
And that's Jeremiyah Love.
Yeah.
So normally I would say yes. I just think this is I wouldn't even call it top heavy because it's kind of top light.
Right.
There's just one guy.
Right.
And then I think there's a pretty big fall off.
You don't have to get a starter in the first round though. You can get a starter in the second, third round still. You just got to hit on him, and obviously the Broncos are still having hope that RJ Harvey can become that. I want to ask you guys quickly because we've talked about Kenyon Sadiq a decent amount over the past week, and we just heard from Fran for the first time. Are you guys coming around on him? Because it does seem like Fran is pretty sold on him.
I've got a long way to go.
It's fair.
Yeah. I'm seeing him as Harold Fannin. That's what I've decided. And I think that
Harold Fannin was so sick.
He was. And the difference is they fed him. He was like one of the most productive college tight ends ever.
Yeah. And to be fair, Kenyon Sadiq also would have put up those numbers at Bowling Green.
Right. And that's
would have commanded that many targets at Bowling Green.
And again, when you watch the you watch an Oregon game and you catch the right one, you leave thinking like, oh my goodness. I mean, that was my first introduction to him. I think that's probably true of a lot of people. Is you watch him on TV and you Google and say like, who the hell is this guy? And sees projected first round pick. You're like, oh, Broncos should be in on that. It's just the ups and the downs and him being tight end 2 for Oregon in the playoff. And like, there's enough of those. But then you just like look at him again, like he's going to go 10 picks higher in the draft because he rolled his jersey up. Like that man just looks incredible. So I don't, I struggle with it, but eventually you pick one of these guys that you're willing to bet on. And that might be him.
The blocking stuff from Fran was really encouraging.
Me too. And let's just be honest. You're not drafting a guy in the first round, especially at 30. Maybe you trade up to 20. Even then, you're not drafting him because he's a great blocker. Like, you're drafting him because of his receiving abilities and can he block well enough? And that's why what I loved hearing from Fran so much is, he might not be blocking Max Crosby. If you have any rookie tight end or any young tight end asking to block Max Crosby, that's on the coaching staff right there. Can he be good enough? Fran, I think that was an unequivocal yes, that he can. You just put him in the right situations. And then, man, just him talking about him as a joker, and I know that word might be a little frayed in Broncos country over the past year, but that just shows you how special he is. So I'm even more sold on him than I was.
It just goes back to what Henry was saying yesterday about Evan Ingram,
right?
Who played 40% of the snaps because Sean didn't trust him to block.
Right.
And so it's like, can he be significantly better at blocking than Evan Ingram so that Sean is willing to play him at least 60% of the snaps?
Well, I mean, Sean played Jimmy Graham a whole ton. And he could block less than Evan Ingram. So if he puts his his first round pick on him, I think that he would treat him like more of the Jimmy Graham in terms of not being afraid to use him.
No, it is Evan Ingram though that scares me. Like, if that didn't happen, I could get around it, because like that's Sean's whole thing is like, you know how to use these players to their strengths, but like you have Evan Ingram who should be one of the 10 most productive receiving tight ends in the NFL. And you can't find ways to get him on the field. And that's what scares me, is that like, what if the blocking doesn't work? What if it doesn't translate? What if the size does show up? And next thing you know, the Broncos are using him like they used Evan Ingram. That's just a complete waste of a first round pick. It's just crazy. Like, Evan Ingram, when he was on the field, they threw the ball 82% of the time. And despite defenses knowing that when he's on the field, the Broncos are going to be passing the ball, the Broncos still were 20% less effective running the ball than normal, because you would think that you'd at least be able to get back to league average when you're doing that. But when you look at how that all worked out with Evan, it scares me. Like, I want somebody who I can trust the Broncos to just find a way to use him, get him on the field.
And this is the downside of picking at 30, which has a lot of upside. It means you had a really good season.
Right.
But it is the downside of picking at 30. There's going to be question marks everywhere. Like, Fran talked to me, like, 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever, I said Casey Concepcion is my draft crush.
Yeah.
Ever since then, I'm like, wait, I don't want another guy, because what if he's not what I think he is, and he's just like somewhere between Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims, and now there's just another guy, and you can't get him enough snaps, and everyone's snaps just went down. But then Fran kind of talked me back into it, talking about, how he's one of the best separators and the yards after the catch, and like that was the reason why I fell in love with him in the first place. It's like, maybe he can be a guy who, commands 10 to 12 targets a game. So this is the fun part of the draft. We're going to get to talk about it and, figure out which flaws we're most willing to gamble on.
Who you're willing to roll the dice on. Yeah.
And what I'll say about the tight end position and Evan Ingram is, Evan Ingram, that production, whether it was Evan, whether it was Bo, whether it was Sean, a combination of all of them, did not work out how I thought it was going to work out last year. But I'm not going to let one uncharacteristic year, because that's what it is for Sean Payton, derail my plans for the future at tight end and drastically change them, because we have 15, 20 years. You can even go back to Sean Payton as an offensive play caller with the Cowboys, have tremendous amount of success with the tight end position. And so I don't just want to like be afraid of that after a year. And I don't think that 1 year is going to change the way Sean handles that position. So I could certainly see him going after Kenyon Sadiq and trading up for him too.
Right. And the flip side of it being, there are snaps that, like Evan Ingram, when he's 47th in the NFL among NFL tight ends in snaps, despite only missing one game, that does mean there are a lot of snaps up for grabs. And so as much as we talk about like receiver, it's going to be tough to get a guy on the field. If they just do the same thing with Evan they did last year, or even only find a couple more ways to get him on the field, there are a lot of snaps available.
Yeah. Still just don't know if Bo Nix likes throwing to tight ends.
Yeah.
It's a big thing in Sean Payton's offense. It's a big thing.
Big thing in the NFL.
Yeah.
It is.
It is. It is. And, Bo is not a finished product, though.
No.
And that's the exciting thing about him. He has the most wins in NFL history in his first 2 seasons. He has the most passing yards of this group. I believe most passing touchdowns. The only quarterback to go to back-to-back playoffs. And yet he still has ways to grow right there. Okay, so let's hit a couple of super chats on our way out. Shout out to everyone that is tuning in. We really appreciate you. CD Scheller is a member of the Supporters Club, and he's tuning in. And let's get to some of these super chats. First one coming in from David Robinson, who says, what do you guys think about Makai Lemon? He seems to be a great option for us with his explosive skill set. Might be worth trading up for. Don't break the bank on a receiver. Thoughts?
I really, 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 really want to break the bank on a receiver. That being said, I think that Makai Lemon's tape is really sick. If you watch just like his highlights, you'll come away loving him. So I think that he actually could be there at 30 for the Broncos, not even need a trade up. I was just looking at the draft guide. I don't know how I lost my spot here, but in the draft guide, I think Fran had him somewhere around like 47,
63 maybe.
Yeah, further down.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's at 63.
So yeah, he could be there potentially even in the second round for the Broncos based on what Fran's looking at. That's the crazy thing about this wide receiver group that you were mentioning early in the week, Zach. It's just like everyone kind of has a different perspective on it. Makai Lemon could probably go in the top 15.
Yeah.
He could go in the top 60. Like we'll see kind of how this shakes out, but he's exciting for sure.
He is similar to Casey Concepcion in a lot of ways. I like the separation better from Casey, but again, they're both right there and very similar. And I think 40 time is going to be important for him because when you're one of those undersized receivers who like his ability to scare people deep is what makes it even easier for him to get open underneath. Like it's the catch and run stuff underneath that gets me excited. Like he's not big like Debo, but to use in that Amon-Ra St. Brown, like we were talking about him on the draft pod earlier. Like could there be some similarities there in just ability to get him the ball, let him work, but so much of that's based on like he scares the defense deep, and so there is more room to work. So I wouldn't be against it.
Ryan, why don't you get this final super chat for us?
All right, it says
From Street Side.
I can't see that. You got
We
make it
have
bigger
2 more.
for me.
Okay, I'll let
good.
you read that one. I'll get Neem Dog right now. It says, would love to dive into Commanders running back tree. B. Rob Jr., Chris Rodriguez, or especially Jeremy McNichols. Trade for one and keep Harvey and JK. I know it's underwhelming. What do you guys think? The Brian Robinson's just fascinating. I have no idea why the Commanders moved on from him last year. He goes to San Francisco and is a better runner than Christian McCaffrey all season long. Statistically, success-wise, everything. Better runner. And so he might be a guy that you can get at a semi-good price, and I'd be okay with adding him to. I'd be very much okay going with JK, RJ, and B-Rob. I like that plan.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think again, if you're bringing JK back, then that third running back becomes a very important spot on the team. And a veteran like that might make the most sense. You'd be curious about what like a third round running back could do. But again, there's just a huge gap because if you draft a running back in the third round, it's 50-50 that guy just isn't ready to contribute at all as a rookie. Some veteran probably does make sense. And I'd be willing to invest there, whatever that means.
Yep. And Street Side Nomad says, get OL, gotta protect Bo.
There we go. I'm all in for going offensive line in the first round as well, especially one of those guys that you play at guard. And if he's available to move out to tackle in a couple of years, you do that. If not, you just keep him at guard.
I'm actually shocked, and maybe we'll dive into this next week, that we haven't talked more about defensive line in the draft. because I think it's actually the most likely position for the Broncos to take.
Don't disagree with you there. Let's get to
because of the depth at the position in this draft and the fact that the Broncos will most likely be losing JFM.
And because they don't necessarily need to replace JFM in free agency.
Right.
You know, like we talk about linebacker, you're going to have your starters. There's a chance to draft a defensive lineman and have him be an important piece of your defense right away.
Let's finish this conversation in overtime. Go to thednvr.com to hear the ChatGPT mock draft.
Boy.
This is the 2026 NFL mock draft round 1. The Cleveland Browns with the number 1 overall pick.
Please tell me we're not going to go through everything. First of all, the Cleveland Browns don't have the number 1 overall pick.
That's my point.
Those are our friends.
They select Shedeur Sanders at number 1.
See, I told you.
There we go.
And at number 9, the Denver Broncos pick number 9. The Denver Broncos select Luther Burden III.
Does it know? Do you say 2025?
It says 2026 at the top.
This happened to me the other day because I was looking for a list of the running backs, and it just gave me last year's running backs, and I was like, nope, that's not it. And then it was like, oh, sorry, here you go, and it did it again, and I was like, okay, you can't help me with this.
And it says the content angle for me with this pick for the Broncos is Sean Payton gets his Deebo Samuel.
That's really bad stuff.
Yeah.
That's why
I can't believe you made us wait for that.
That's why we use Fran's draft guide, because it's accurate, it's legit, and it just proves your point, RK, about why you go and read a document that's 387 players on it.
Yep.
Yeah,
right there.
And there's an article last week that went super viral about AI and how it's like getting better every single day. And
Doesn't know ball.
he's like, basically whatever you want it to do, check in a month. So I'll be checking back in a month to see if it knows ball at all.
Yes.
I like that.
It
Are
does
we done
not
with
know
Super
ball.
Chats, Dan? Did we get a final one? All right, that's going to do it for us today. We got one more show tomorrow. It's going to be a fun one. Shout out to everyone that tuned in with us today, and we'll see you tomorrow on the DNVR Broncos podcast.
God bless Bo Nix.
We all silly like the mayor.